Hi, hello, and welcome back to the channel. Something that I have learned from South Park's most recent episode is everyone has got a nut. And if this means anything to you, obviously you'll know what I'm talking about. But essentially, it means that everyone has things that they have to pay for. They have their own maintenance costs every month, and the things that they want to do, necessities versus wants and all that stuff. And I feel like South Park's most recent episode, not only does the episode have a funny name, but it sets up the framework for a really important conversation that I feel like we all need to have, honestly. Because for those of you guys that haven't watched the episode, essentially it starts off with PC Principal coming up to Mr. Mackey and saying, hey, there's been some budget cuts made. You gotta go, bro. You're fired. And Mr. Mackey, he is distraught. He is disheveled because working at the school, he's been working there for 15, 20 years, and he is distraught because this is his career. This is his livelihood. And being a counselor is the way that he feels most fulfilled. And obviously he is shattered by this, and he goes on and tries to look for other jobs to no avail. Unfortunately, he's finding nothing, and he finds himself at the bank because his nut, it's just getting too much. You know what I mean? Like, he can't find a job, he doesn't have money to afford what he needs, and he obviously is tweaking and freaking out. And by him going to the bank with an accountant, the accountant is like, yeah, you're nuts, like $8,000 a month. And he is freaking out because this is too much for him, like, to not have a job. And then the accountant says, well, I have a solution for you. Join the ICE. And Mr. Mackey, he is appalled by this, and thank God. But he was appalled by this because he's like, yeah, no, absolutely not. I'm a counselor. I help people. And keep this in mind as we talk more about this episode, is that he resonates. Being a counselor is his core identity. He aligns his morals with the fact that he is a counselor. And whenever you think about that, the events of this episode make a lot more sense because he keeps looking for jobs, and unfortunately he can't find any. And all of these bills racking up, he needs to go somewhere. He picks up that pamphlet and he makes his way to the ICE. And I'm gonna be real, as he entered that building, I was shitting myself as I was watching this episode, because for those of you that are fans of South Park, you know for a fact that this is not Mr. Mackey. Everything that the ICE does, everything that the ICE stands for, that is not Mr. Mackey. And by him doing this, he is going against not just his morals, but he's going against himself. But regardless, he goes into the ICE, and obviously you can tell based on his demeanor whenever he's sitting in this little like lobby waiting room area that he doesn't want to be there. He feels like he doesn't want to be there, but he's forced to be there out of necessity, even to the point to where he's questioning, like, what the hell is going on? Because they're not asking him barely any questions, and he's kind of appalled by the whole process. But he goes through, and you see all of these people going through this process in a line like they're fucking factory rotisserie chicken, whenever they all come into this presentation room where we see Kristi Noem. And I could go into all of the stuff with this episode, but just to keep it short, it is a very disturbing and very graphic kind of training video showing how they should go about treating these people and going about these rates. And Mr. Mackey, he is the only person in the room who is appalled by this. And he's questioning it the entire time. He's like, oh my God, like very vocal about it, while everyone around him is silent. And I feel like that's really important to note. And he continues on, and he works for the ICE, not only doing his job, but doing an exceptional job. But you see though, every single time there's these raids, there is a lot of people who are with Mr. Mackey being violent, because we all know the scum that is the ICE. However, Mr. Mackey, he is the only one that we see in this episode treating these people with respect. You see him in the back of these vans asking these people questions to make sure they're not undocumented, and you see him lean down not just once but multiple times throughout the episode and be like, hey, I'm so sorry, I really don't want to do this. And that is another example of him going against himself and not wanting to do something. And I said that he did an exceptional job at what he was doing. And after all of these raids, he's getting praised, you know, and every single time he is praised by Kristi Noem, he's like, I mean, yeah, I guess, you know, and you can just tell that something within him knows that this isn't right. Granted, he's forced to do this. You know, it's not like he willingly wanted to work for the ICE, but even out of necessity, he's still doing so. He's still doing what he didn't want to do. But during the last raid, you know, he was called out because he was sitting in a building somewhere. I don't remember exactly where he was. I'll put the clip up here. And he was in this building and he was pulled out by other members of the ICE. And they were like, hey, Mackey, we need to talk to you outside. And obviously by this point, Mackey is terrified. And if you want me to be entirely honest with you, I thought they were going to fuck him up for apologizing to these immigrants, but thankfully, that's not what happened. Kristi Noem, they kind of pulled him out and she was like, hey, since you've done such an exceptional job, the president wants to help you with your nut, right? And Mackey, he's freaking out because before this, since he started working at the ICE, he went back to this accountant to try to get all of his finances in order. And they were like, yeah, you actually have an extra 10 grand to spend every month. But oh wait, your nut's now 12,000. And Mackey obviously starts tweaking because you remember, if you've been paying attention, what I said before, that his nut was only 8 grand a month, you know? And so he's like, hey, what the fuck do you mean? Like, it was only 8 before. And it's like, oh yeah, well, now that you're making more with the ICE, your nut's a little bit more because you have to pay a little bit more, i.e., kind of nudging at taxes. But Mr. Mackey, hearing that the president wants to help him out with his nut, he's like, oh, I mean, okay, you know, because that was the goal from the very beginning. You know, he only started working with the ICE because he needed to make his nut. And when he heard this, he was like, oh, thank God, because that was the goal from the very beginning. So he's flown out there and he meets the president. And the president starts talking to Mackey and says, hey, we want to make you the face of Homeland Security, you know, and Mackey's like, I don't know. Like, you can tell he's very, like, he doesn't want to do it, you know, because he didn't want to work for the ICE to begin with. So he starts spouting off like, well, what about Kristi? What about Kristi? And the president is like, well, you've done such a good job. And I mean, like, her face freaks me out anyway. So like, come on. And the president leads him into this room with Satan and with his vice. And there is, needless to say, there is a huge misunderstanding. And I'm going to be honest, like, that scene alone, this whole episode was really unsettling, but this scene in particular really fucked me up. And like Mackey, I was freaking out, and he runs out of the room and he's like, I'll be right back. Like, there's a misunderstanding. And after he runs out of this room, he runs into Clyde, because in the very beginning of the episode, Clyde becomes a master debater, if you will, because if you guys like have been on any political sides of TikTok, there has been a surge of these content creators or podcasters who kind of just spout off their opinions, you know, and people are so divided that you can find a base almost anywhere, regardless of how asinine your viewpoints are. And Clyde, you know, he's spouting off all this anti-Semitic, racist, misogynistic shit, you know, throughout the entirety of this episode, which was crazy because it's not like Clyde, you know, and even Cartman is joking like, you stole my stick, you know, like it was a whole thing. They have this conversation, and I'm not going to try to paraphrase it. I'm going to play it for you here because I don't think I could phrase it as well as it played out.
What are you doing here, young man?
Just trying to make my nut, sir. Didn't really want all this.
I know we all have a lot of pressures and we all want nice things, okay? But if you're doing something you don't really believe in, just to make your nut, you're gonna find that you just get sadder and your nut just gets bigger, okay?
Yeah, I guess you're right. But who are you?
I'm a goddamn counselor, that's what I am. This place isn't right for either of us. There's gotta be someone that can help get us out.
And it was obvious from the very beginning of that interaction that Clyde also didn't want to be there. He literally said, you know, I'm just trying to make my nut, sir. And then by Mr. Mackey, something that was so notable to me is that he went back to being himself. Like, yeah, he became like an exceptional member of the ICE, but at the end of the episode, here he is pulling up this chair and being the counselor and being himself. And not only did he give an amazing pep talk to Clyde, because as we can see throughout the episode, like, if you go against yourself and go against your morals just to try to make your nut, you know, you just get sadder and the nut keeps getting bigger. And you know, the nut in this case, I hate calling it that, but the nut in this case, of course, they're referring to money. You know, they're referring to money, but that could also refer to a bunch of different things. I'm trying to think of a good way to put this. I'm going to put it in really simplistic terms. Like, let's say you're a person that doesn't like chocolate ice cream, you know, but there's a group, everybody in your town likes chocolate ice cream, and you're going to be weird if you don't like chocolate ice cream. So you pretend to like chocolate ice cream, but every single time you bite into that godforsaken spoon, you shudder at the fact that you're doing something that doesn't align with you. You're shuddering at the fact that you're lying to yourself. And something that's really notable at the end of this is Mackey says, you know, I'm a goddamn counselor. He really has a full circle moment and brings it back to himself. And by doing that, he also says after, there's got to be someone that's going to get us out of here. You know, but at the end, if you keep watching the episode, Mackey is the one that gets him, Clyde, and Dora out of that fucked up situation. And not only are you helping yourself by staying true to you, but you're also helping the other people around you. Because if Mr. Mackey were to just keep going on with the ICE, and if he were to have hooked up with the president, if you will, he wouldn't have ran into Clyde, and he wouldn't have had that conversation, and he wouldn't have came back to who he was, and Clyde would have just kept doing the same thing that he was doing, and the nut would have kept getting bigger, and he would have kept getting sadder. And the same would have happened with Mackey. And my point in saying all of this is stay true to yourself. Do not abandon your morals, and do not abandon yourself to conform. You know, and this could go with so many things. Like I said, career and things to make money, or keeping up like appearances with other people, with friends, people in your town, etc. But also with everything that we've been talking about in regard to censorship and everything happening in the world and in society. A lot of you have really expressed a lot of discernment and a lot of upset over the state of society as it is now. You know, but I'm here to tell you that despite all of the shitty stuff that is happening in this world, in your town, in your state, whatever, you don't have to go against yourself, and you don't have to succumb to that. You know, and I'm emotional. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I could cry because as I was watching this episode, like, I felt the need to say something because this really spoke to me. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation that we had together, and hopefully this resonated with you. And if you did enjoy the conversation, please be sure to like, subscribe, and maybe if you're so inclined, watch another video to spend more time with your girl. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.